Hello and welcome. Thank you for showing curiosity for the information that I'm going to share today. I need to disclose that I myself am not a spiritual leader in the common understanding of the term. My background is in mental health, and my specialty is in trauma. And much of the work that I do with those who come to me for help is very much rooted in spirituality. So, whether you provide services in a synagogue or church, a mosque, or a hospital, or maybe no particular place at all, the common ground between us really lies in our sacred commitment to walk alongside others in their suffering, to listen with humility, and to serve with our presence. So let's ground ourselves in this moment before we dive in. Just taking this slow, deep breath. Just let your shoulders drop and allow your spirit to just softly land in this space. This session is not about passing judgment. It is a sharing of vital knowledge and a call to each of us to elevate our practice. It's about how leaders in many different forms can offer something more powerful than advice, an offering of safety. We'll talk today about trauma, about spiritual leadership, about how to provide protection rather than pressure to the people who come before us in pain, about how faith teachings and presence can either open doors to healing or deepen unseen wounds. And this isn't about theology. This is about the people who present themselves before us seeking acceptance, understanding, wisdom, and heartfelt guidance. That requires us to really value their lives, their dignity, and their right to feel safe in sacred spaces. This is also about partnership because no one of us can carry this entire responsibility alone. When we collaborate with professionals in mental health, advocacy, healers, and other professions, we don't dilute our own leadership. We really deepen it. Partnering with others who hold different forms of knowledge not only elevates our practice, it elevates the impact of every sacred interaction. So let's begin that work now together. Let's start by naming a very difficult truth. Spiritual harm isn't always the result of cruelty. Sometimes it comes from good intentions, unaccompanied by wisdom. We've all offered counsel that felt faithful at the time of the offering, quoting sacred texts, urging prayer, encouraging forgiveness. But without trauma awareness, those well-meaning responses can cause real harm. And here's just a few examples. A person experiencing violence at home is told to pray harder or keep the family together without being asked if they feel safe. Someone struggling with depression is told to trust the divine more, as if despair is a sign of weak faith. And a survivor of childhood abuse is urged to forgive quickly, but without the space to process or grieve. These responses may sound loving, but they can reinforce silence, shame, and spiritual isolation. 36% of abuse survivors report being pressured by a spiritual leader to stay in an unsafe relationship. That's not compassion. That's coercion cloaked in sacred language. The question that needs to be asked and answered is this: what do my teachings sound like to someone who is suffering? Do my responses restore their dignity, or do they deepen the damage? Again, this is not about blame. It's about readiness. It's about learning to ask, does my leadership make people feel safe, seen, respected, and supported? If not, there's some growth that needs to happen, and that growth is a sacred responsibility. One of the most essential lessons in trauma-informed care is this: good intentions do not erase harmful impacts. We may have meant to comfort. We may have meant to guide someone back to their center. But if the words made them feel smaller, unsafe, or ashamed, then the impact was harmful, no matter the intention. This isn't about guilt. It's about growth. When someone says, that hurt me, and we respond with, well, that wasn't my intent, we're tending to our ego, our comfort. But when we respond by saying, thank you for letting me know, I will do better, we shift ourselves into a place of accountability. We don't grow by defending our motives. We grow by honoring the experience of those we serve. Some of the worst harm in this world is not done by monsters or by people with malicious intent. It's done by people who genuinely believe they are doing the right thing, by those who are unaware, uninformed, and repeating what they've always been taught without question. Harm can wear the clothing of tradition. Harm can speak the language of care. And harm can be disguised as love. And that is why it is so important that we examine not only what we believe, but how our beliefs land in the lives of those who are hurting. Because when we mistake control for compassion, obedience for healing, or silence for peace, we can become instruments of harm while believing we are agents of good. This isn't about throwing away traditions. It's about illuminating them. It's about asking, what do these sacred teachings sound like to a wounded soul? Do they bring relief or re-traumatization? That distinction, the one between intent and impact, between belief and awareness, is the heart of trauma-informed spiritual care. To lead with compassion, we must first understand what trauma is. Not just the concept, but in the body, the mind, and the spirit. Trauma is not just what happens to someone, it's what happens inside them in response to something overwhelming, threatening, or violating. It can come from a single catastrophic moment or from small, persistent moments of fear, neglect, or control. And it isn't just emotional. Trauma literally reorganizes the nervous system. There are many kinds of trauma. Acute trauma is a single event, like an accident or an assault. Chronic trauma is long-term exposure to harm, such as abuse, racism, and poverty. And complex trauma is repeated betrayal and harm in relationships over time, especially in childhood. And spiritual trauma is harm inflicted using sacred language, authority, or community. Trauma doesn't always look like panic or tears either. It can show up as withdrawal, hyperactivity, numbness, perfectionism, fear of making decisions, overcompliance, or emotional shutdown. These are not personality flaws. They're adaptations, the body's way of surviving. So, what happens in the body during trauma activation? When someone is triggered by a traumatic experience or a reminder, the body shifts into survival mode. And what that means is the amygdala, our danger center, becomes hyperactive, perceiving threat even when there really may not be any. The prefrontal cortex, this is our reasoning and decision making center, goes offline, making it incredibly difficult to think clearly or problem solve. And the hippocampus, which manages memory, can misfile time, causing past events to feel present and overwhelming. Our bodies are flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, increasing our heart rate, tightening muscles, and altering our breathing. This isn't just anxiety, it's the body preparing to fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. These responses are also not random, they're deeply adaptive. They once helped that person stay alive in danger, stay invisible in chaos, stay compliant to avoid punishment, or stay emotionally disconnected to survive the unbearable. These are not signs of weakness. They are evidence of a system doing its best to stay alive. Here's the problem. Once the threat has passed, the body typically goes back to a natural state of ease. When we are activated through trauma, the body doesn't know when it's safe. The same responses that once protected that person now prevent connection and intimacy. They sabotage self-worth. They can trigger explosive reactions or deep withdrawal, leading them to over-apologize, over-function, or completely numb out. And when leaders don't recognize these behaviors as trauma responses, it's easy to judge, thinking these things are sinful, disobedient, or lacking faith. The spiritual impact of trauma can create disconnection from one's beliefs or sacred identity, guilt for feeling anger, fear, or doubt, a sense that the divine is distant or punishing. They may have difficulty trusting anyone, including their spiritual community. These wounds are usually invisible, but they shape everything. How a person prays, shows up, and even enters a room. When we don't understand trauma, we mislabel people. We call them resistant. We call them rebellious. We call them spiritually immature. But what they really are is scared, disconnected, and in pain. And they need spiritual care that sees past that behavior. and reaches toward that wounded nervous system and the sacred soul underneath. So, how do you lead with care? Trauma-informed leadership is not about being a therapist. It's about creating spiritual spaces that center safety, dignity, and healing. Here are 3 commitments that guide trauma-informed leadership. I do want to say at this point that I have included a QR code at the end that has resources and guides on the things I'm about to talk about and gives you much more detail and support. So people must know these things to feel safe, that they can share without judgment, that they will not be pressured to forgive or reconcile, but to just have a witness, that their pain will be held, not dismissed or explained away. And this is what safety sounds like. I'm here with you. You're not alone. You get to move at the pace that feels right to you. Trauma often comes from betrayal. So healing begins with trust. And trustworthiness looks like this: following through on promises, being honest about our role and our limits, consistency in how we show up, not being overly invested one day and absent the next. Trust builds when we stop performing care and start practicing presence. Trauma disempowers. Our job is to return voice, agency, and choice. Empowerment means asking, not assuming. Referring people to professionals when needed. Supporting decisions that prioritize safety, even when they challenge tradition. Empowerment isn't letting go of tradition, it's letting go of control. These are not new ideas. They're deeply rooted in every tradition that values justice, healing, and love. We simply need to practice them with more intention. One of the most powerful things that you can do as a spiritual leader is not to provide answers, but to help people come home to themselves. Trauma disconnects people, not only from others, but from their own inner knowing. It disrupts the body's signals and teaches people to doubt their instincts. They may not know if they're truly safe or if they're allowed to rest or if they're worthy of gentleness. And so when someone comes in pain, we don't need to solve them. We can simply ask, what are you noticing in your body right now? What feels tight? What feels soft? Where do you feel safe or unsafe in your story? These questions invite people to turn inward without judgment, to begin rebuilding trust in themselves. One sensation, one breath, one small choice at a time. You don't need to know what to do. You don't need a degree in counseling to support someone in pain. You don't need to offer theology or even clarity. Sometimes the most healing thing you can say is, I don't have answers, but I'm here and I believe you. You can help someone access their own wisdom by slowing down, by helping them name their feelings, or by simply asking, what do you need right now? What would safety look like in this moment? Would it be okay if we sat together in silence for a bit? These questions are not passive, they are powerful. They shift leadership from authority to accompaniment. And that shift can change everything. Empowerment begins not when we tell people what to do, but when we remind them that their body holds wisdom, that their emotions carry information, and that they are worthy of honoring both. Let me bring these two ideas to life with two stories. Both stories involve people in spiritual communities. Both experience fear, confusion, and trauma. But they meet very different responses. And those responses shape everything that comes next. Let's talk about the first one. Her name was Malia. She had been with her partner for 10 years. She was the worship leader in her spiritual community and was outwardly joyful, always smiling. But behind closed doors, her home was a place of silence and control. Her partner didn't need to hit her to hurt her. He monitored her messages. He dismissed her opinions in front of their children. And he called her crazy when she cried. He told her the sacred gave him authority over her. And one day, after a particularly grueling and cruel argument, she went to her own faith leader, not to report, just to find some comfort. And he listened. And then he gently reminded her of her role. He quoted sacred teachings about submission, forgiveness, and loyalty. He said, maybe this is your spiritual test. So she stayed, and in staying, she lost more and more of herself. Eventually, she was able to leave the relationship, but she also left her community. And for years, she could not return to any place of worship without shaking. It wasn't just that he used faith to harm me, she said. It's that my community affirmed it. They left me alone in it. Let's go to the second story. This is a story about David. David was the father and a devoted member of his interfaith meditation circle. He never labeled what he experienced as abuse, but he knew his partner's explosive rages left him scared to speak freely. One day, after a terrifying night, he confided in his group facilitator. She didn't offer a teaching. She didn't quote a verse. She simply said, "That sounds incredibly hard. I believe you, and you do not deserve to be afraid in your own home." She connected him to a trauma-informed counselor. She kept checking in, not to pressure, but to support. And when he chose to leave the relationship, she and the group helped him find housing, childcare, and healing resources. Years later, he still attends that circle, and now he helps others. That space didn't save me, he said. It helped me save myself. Two people, two communities, two radically different outcomes. Both spiritual leaders cared, but only one had the tools. This isn't about blame, it's about readiness. The question isn't whether we're loving enough. The question is, are we informed enough to make our love safe? We've walked together through some hard truth and sacred possibilities. And I want to leave you with something clear, actionable, and rooted in hope. Here are three commitments of trauma-informed spiritual leadership. A commitment to ongoing learning. We all have more learning to do about trauma, healing, and the ways that our traditions can both uplift and harm. Ask, where am I still curious? Where am I being called to grow? Building bridges with professionals. You are not a therapist, but you are a trusted voice. Your power lies in saying, you deserve support. Let me help you find it. And lead with boundaries and compassion. You don't have to fix people. You simply have to be a safe presence, one that honors pain, protects dignity, and supports healing. Thank you. At the Human Liberation and Balance Institute, we believe that healing is sacred and that safety, dignity, and shared power are its foundation. As a clinical trauma specialist with a deep respect for spiritual traditions, I offer consulting, education, and community-based experiences that help leaders bridge the gap between mental health and spiritual care. Healby can equip faith leaders and healers and service providers with the tools to recognize trauma, not as brokenness, but as an adaptive response, and to offer safety, not pressure, in the spaces you steward. I want to support you as you walk alongside others in their pain, and to do so with greater wisdom, compassion, and accountability. If you would like me to come speak to your congregation or community, please visit humanlbi.org. If you're able to schedule a half or full day program by July 31st, I'm offering 25% off. The supporting tools I mentioned earlier are available using the QR code on your screen. They're designed to accompany this program and enhance your development of trauma-informed spiritual leadership. Finally, please complete the short feedback form using the QR code on your screen. Your feedback really is fundamental to the work I do. Thank you. Namaste.